Yes, now we have to talk about this past tough series against the Astros in the ALDS. Games 1 through 3, unfortunately, the Mariners would not be able to advance or force a game 4, getting swept in 3 games against Houston. So let's take a look. We have to reluctantly take a look. So game 1 at Houston, a crushing loss, 8-7. Player of the game, center fielder Julio Rodriguez, 2 hits, 3 runs, 2 RBIs, and 1 walk. Julio really shows out in game 1 of the ALDS there. Really tough one as Seattle was able to jump all over future Hall of Famer Justin Verlander, who's had a great year despite really kind of getting up there in age. The Mariners had been playing really generally horribly against him throughout the regular season, and this was going to be a tough matchup, but they were able to jump all over Verlander, and unfortunately, a Yordan Alvarez 3-run homer to walk it off in the bottom of the 9th crushed that, and I didn't really want to think about it that way, but I was concerned that this might be a bad omen for the rest of the series. Obviously, it was game 1, and the Mariners have been a really resilient team throughout the year, even in the playoffs, obviously, against Toronto in game 2. So you would have figured, hey, maybe not so much you worry about this, but just the way that was just kind of a crushing loss. Game 2 at the Astros, a 4-2 loss. Play the game, right fielder Mitch Haniger, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 walk. Another tough one. I know Seattle was able to jump out to a 2-1 lead at one point, but another Alvarez homer throughout the game put Houston ahead, and they never looked back. And it just kind of seemed like this guy. I talked to Bel about it. I think it was before game 3. Where, when the Storm played Las Vegas in the playoffs, it was all Chelsea Gray, and Chelsea Gray was just kind of giving everybody in Seattle nightmares, and we just couldn't get away from what she was doing. It was like all these monster threes, and then it was Yordan Alvarez in this one. It was just like, can we get away from this guy, please? And they were able to get away from him in game 3. He didn't do any damage in this one, but game 3 is a game that'll probably haunt my brain for a while. Game 3 in Seattle, the first playoff game in the Pacific Northwest in the building that is T-Mobile Park, now formerly Safeco Field. An 18-inning, yes, 18. That's two full-length games. 18-inning loss, 1-0. I thought the 13-inning game that Seattle won 1-0 against the Yankees back in July was a long one, but yes, a 1-0 loss to end the Mariners season in the ALDS, unfortunately. Player of the game, starting pitcher George Kirby. Kirby, Nintendo character or not, 7 innings pitched, 6 hits allowed, 2 hit batters, 5 strikeouts. I wanted to highlight the 2 hit batters there and the 6 hits allowed because you can see the issues for the 24-year-old, but he still went through 6 innings. Was able to end his outing with a really high fastball against Jose Altuve to get him swinging. Stared him down a little bit. Again, this is a 24-year-old who didn't pitch in AAA at all and has come in and contributed for this Mariners ball club all year, gave them a great chance to win it, was an ace-like performance, and Seattle couldn't get things done offensively. So, before we get to players of the ALDS on our side of things, yes, it's very tough, and I'll speak to you candidly about it. It's very tough to, end the drought, to show all the resilience you have, to play well against teams above 500, to beat the defending champion Braves in a 3-game series, to play okay against Houston throughout the regular season. You went 7-12, which, obviously under 500, but you didn't get basically swept like you did in 2018, where you went 1-for-18 against them, You win game 1 of the wild card series against Toronto, who has plenty of firepower up and down the lineup. You shut them out in that game. And then that incredible 7-run comeback in game 2 to send you to the ALDS. I want to remind people the goal for this season was just to win, was to clinch a playoff spot and to end the drought. That was all it was, and I think when you saw the sort of potential that this team had, I remember in the home opener at T-Mobile Park, you stomped Houston. I think it was like 11-0, and that was against Verlander. But there's something I've highlighted all year was the offensive inconsistency. You needed better performance from some guys. I've been critical of Julio through part of the postseason. I mean, he had that great game 1, but really was relatively quiet. He had a double that was just a foot away from being a homer in the bottom of the 8th inning. You think, oh, shoot, that would have been it. It's tough. I won't sit here and lie to you. It was tough, sitting there in the auxiliary press box with Bell, with Matt, with Liv, with Big O. It was tough. It was really tough. And, I'll think about those long, drowning 18 innings for a while, being the first one at the media check-in. Yes, the first one before any of the other guys that do sports in this city. I won't say names, but you know who they are. 6:30 in the morning to be there, to show that dedication, to be on the field, to talk to my buddy Rajay Davis. You remember Rajay Davis? Just being there with the media guys, being there with his team, the great energy, the rally towels, Felix Hernandez throwing out the first pitch. To have him be involved was awesome. Just the energy and the fact that the large majority of the 47,690 stayed through the 18 innings, the 18 long dragging innings. The fact that those fans stayed and chanted for the team after they had lost means a lot. I would love to look back at that as a classic in a good way, but I'll still remember that game a lot. Whenever this team wins the World Series here in the next few years, I'll think back about that because that was the first step. I think about if we were going to compare it, the Seahawks in 2012, when they fell against Atlanta, they kind of, showed flashes throughout the year, but they needed a couple more pieces. And they got that, and they reloaded the next year. I'm not guaranteeing a World Series win next year, comparing them. Mariners, Seahawks 2012 getting to the divisional round and then winning the World Series, the Super Bowl the next year. I'm not going to say that, but this team really isn't that far off. You keep the pitching the same. Maybe you get a 5th starter if that's available and if that's an option, and if it wouldn't, upset the team too much because you'd probably push Marco Gonzalez out of the rotation. But you add another bat. Hell, maybe you somehow attract Aaron Judge here. Don't know how that's going to happen. If you could make it happen, shoot, I wouldn't mind. This team wasn't necessarily supposed to get Robbie Ray. So who knows? With the shift band, maybe you see these big comeback years from a guy like Jesse Winker. You see better years offensively all around the board. Adam Frazier had a relatively tough year at the plate, but I looked at it with Bell, right? We look at this, at least we're going to go through the defensive point of view. Cal Raleigh had a career year, and he is essentially a rookie this year, and he can only get better. Right, third base, Eugenio Suarez I know Bella and Matt and I were frustrated that he wasn't able to play the majority of those extra innings on a defensive switch as a pinch runner from Dylan Moore. But, the year he had great defensively and 30-plus homers. Hard to be mad at that. JP Crawford, JP's locked in. He's been a guy that he had struggles at the plate and he had a down year defensively, but I know that's not what he does. He's a Gold Glover, and I'm expecting him to return to that. Second base, Adam Frazier. We'll get there. I can figure that out. We're going to look at a lot of these players in the offseason and have sort of player profile articles for them, so keep an eye out for that. But second base is maybe somewhere I'm looking at. But I know that he had flashes throughout the year, and maybe he's able to come back. Ty France, Gold Glover, should be a Gold Glover this year. All-star, one of the best hitters in baseball. Had a tough second half of the year, but we've seen what he can do. Left field is interesting. Need a bounce-back year from Winker. Maybe you put Haggerty there. We saw what Haggerty's been able to do this past year. It sucks that he was injured. Couldn't play in any of the playoff games. Jared Kelenic, maybe he steps in left field there. We saw what he can do in September. Just need to be able to carry that throughout a full season. Julio Rodriguez. Do I need to say anything about Julio? I don't think I do. The guy's 21. Remember, to age people and to make myself look like a fool, him and I are the same age. To see what he's been able to do and to know that he's only going to get better, sky's the limit. Don't need to really touch on that too much. Right field's where it gets interesting, though. Mitch Haniger's contract is up. He said he wants to be back. But again, something I keep talking about is availability. If you're not going to be in the lineup for me the majority of the year, and if I can potentially get an upgrade in free agency, why wouldn't I? right? But we've seen what Mitch can be. In the 2 seasons he's played the most games, he's been in the MVP conversation. So that one, right field's a tough one. So, but you look at the majority of that, you look at the bullpen, Los Bomberos, all that stuff. Matt Brash is really young. You've got Paul Sewald's been Paul Sewald for the majority of the year. Diego Castillo had some tough. Andres Munoz is like 23. So this team, the point being is that this team is in a great position going forward to compete for years, not just this year. It's not like when you had, excuse me, all that smoke in those 18 innings was not good for me. Excuse me. Oh, Nelson Cruz and Robinson Cano are aging. And I always liken it to, in those years before you really committed to the rebuild, you were putting Band-Aids on a boat with a bunch of holes in it. It'll help you, sure, for a little bit, but in the long run, you needed at one point to just tear the thing down and start anew. And they've done that, and you're seeing the success in that. You've got a guy like Luis Castillo wrapped up. Yes, I know Robbie Ray gave up the homer to Alvarez, and he had his moments, but overall, it's better to have him on this roster than to have a hole that you're trying to fill. George Kirby, what can I say about 24-year-old George Kirby, who will only continue to get better? Logan Gilbert, for a good amount of this season, looked like your ace, and that's a lot considering that you had Robbie Ray on this team. So bottom line, yes, it's frustrating. Yes, it's tough to see that, but you've got a bright future. And I'm not saying that, because of what you had in the farm system. Competing teams give up pieces of their farm system, and that's what you did this year with Luis Castillo. So the future is really bright for these guys. And, Curtis asked me how I'm taking the loss. It's been tough. And I'll think about it, but you're in a great position going forward. And I mean, they did more than I could ask. I just needed them to get to the playoffs and break that damn drought. I didn't really care much else of what you did, but you kicked Toronto out of the dance. You really took Houston to the limit in all 3 games, and honestly, like you and Curtis and I were all kind of talking about, I don't see Cleveland or New York taking Houston very far in the ALCS. I don't. I think we gave them their best punch. So, and with Philly and San Diego across the way, if somehow we were able to make it to the LCS, and I feel like our chances would be good against either team. I know Cleveland's been hot, but say we made the World Series, I think you could take Philly or San Diego. You played Philly early on in the year. You didn't have everybody at their full strength like you did throughout the second half. San Diego, you handled San Diego. So that's my long piece about it. But all in all, the fact that I got to have this thing on here, this postseason logo, means a lot. So I'll wear this thing for a while until we get our postseason 2023 hats. But yeah, that's my piece. I've been sitting here talking for a lot. People don't want to see my face too often. Belle, why don't give me your thoughts on it?
It was brutal. I think it was even more brutal to see Kirby having such a good game and then just our offense not be able to reciprocate a scoring run. So like you said, for those 18 innings, it was just our offense struggled. And you mentioned not having Suarez. That reflecting back, I wondered if, and honestly thought that he would have made a difference in those extra innings. So it's tough. Going into the series, I really strongly felt that there was no way we were going to get swept. And so it hurts, it stings. And it feels like that momentum shift, like you said, it feels like it totally happened in that game 1. I can't remember who the pitcher was to end the game there, but
It was Robbie.
was it Robbie? Okay, because I
Yep.
remember Jordan Alvarez saying that he just watched a video of him like previously pitching and then knew exactly what he needed to do. So it's brutal and it hurts. And that game 2 loss actually made game 1 sting a little bit more for me because it felt like it should have been in our grasp and that was our game. So yeah, it's tough, but like you said, we have a lot to look forward to and our guys are only young and we'll get to it here, but not everybody was fully healthy. You mentioned Haggerty, and of course, now we know about Raleigh and his struggles with injuries.
Yeah,
So
God.
it can only get better.
Yeah, and to your point, with the injury things, I know some of these were throughout the year, but think we go through that, go through the lineup again. Raleigh, we're gonna get to his injury here, but he missed time throughout the year. Gino missed time. JP missed a little bit, not too much. JP, good on him for being healthy a good amount of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't think Frazier missed too much time. Ty missed time. We dealt with that wrist stuff, and I hope he's able to, heal up through the offseason. Winker dealt with some stuff, and he ended the season with a neck injury. Haggerty out, obviously. Julio dealt with some stuff for a while, right, with his back. Mitch dealt with stuff. So, yeah, you were banged up throughout the year. Luckily, your pitchers were able to stay healthy, which is pretty incredible. With the work rate of some of these guys, to have them, I think all of your rotation stay off the IL, that's a big deal. So props on them. But yeah, you dealt with some injuries throughout the year where maybe you find yourself in a higher spot. Maybe you host wild card games. Who knows? But yeah, long-winded rant. In short, yes, it's tough to end the way you did, but the journey was incredible. It's the best season I've watched in my life. Baseball wise, I don't know how we compare it to everything else. I'd have to sit down. But yeah, things only get better for these guys. So let's get to players of the ALDS. I went with George. I mean, just with the past start, he was incredibly lights out. He became the first player since like 1868 to be a rookie and to record a save and start a game in, I believe, the divisional series in baseball. I could be wrong on that. Alex Mayer does great with the stats. It was something like that. But George was excellent, to be put in an elimination game spot and to deliver like he did was just downright incredible. So great on him. Bell, with the Cal, I mean, the numbers don't look great, but I feel like it doesn't really matter about the numbers. What did we go with Cal here for?
Yeah, it was the heart, really. Raleigh caught 236 pitches from 9 different pitchers over the course of that 6 hours and 22-minute game, and all with a broken thumb and several torn ligaments in his hand. So, just a warrior. And I went with him because just full on heart and full on just. There was a time in the game where his like splint came off and he just replaced it and then went right back to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the splint, I was like, "Ooh, that can't be good." But then hearing post game the broken thumb and the torn ligaments, and like you said, playing the catcher position, 236 pitches. What a guy,
Yeah.
what a guy. So, um, and then hopefully, whether it's Tom Murphy or someone else that's backing him up in the catcher tandem this upcoming year can give him some relief because I know he caught a lot of games this year. And Casale didn't really work out. Terrenz kind of lost his bat.
Yeah.
Tom Murphy was out for the year pretty early on. So, yeah, hopefully we can get a tandem where we can kind of lighten his load this upcoming season. Yeah, it's tough. We'll have a season in review next week where we might need a whole episode to just break all this down. So we'll figure that out. But season in review for our Mariners, who finished the regular season with a 90-win, 72-loss season. They swept Toronto 2-0 in the wild card series. They get swept by the Astros in the ALDS. But all in all, just a great year for our baseball club.